the second part of the lecture on the special senses. Now we are going to talk about the eye. When we are considering about the anatomy of eye, there is a rounded wall of the eye. This wall consists of two main layers, the outer layer and the inner layer. When we are considering about the outer layer, the major part is consisted by the sclera. It is called the white of the eye, which does not allow light to enter into the eye. But the anterior part of the sclera, which is called the cornea, allows light to enter into the eye. Therefore, it is called the window of the eye. Carefully look into this image. You can see the outer layer of the eye wall. The majority is formed by the sclera, but the front part is formed by the cornea. Cornea is the window of the eye, which allows light to enter into the eye, while the sclera do not allow light to enter into the eye. Let's see about the middle layer, which is also called vestibular or pigmented layer. It is richly supplied with blood vessels and pigments. The major part of the middle layer is formed by the choroid. It lines the sclera and it absorbs any light which enters through the sclera. The middle layer is also formed the ciliary body. They are important to hold and move the lens of the eye. The anterior part of the middle layer forms an iris. There is a hole in the middle of the iris. This hole is called the pupil. So in this picture you can see the middle layer, which is mainly formed by the choroid and also the ciliary muscle and the iris. There is a pupil in the middle of the iris. Now let's see about the inner layer. It is also called the retina of the eye. It has a rich blood supply. It contains visual receptors. There are two main types of visual receptors called rods and cones. Among them, rods are important to detect black, white, and gray shades, and also to detect images in dim light. But the cones allows us to see images in bright light, and they are also important to see colors. So this image will provide you the idea about the different layers of the eye. So if I ask you to draw and label the structure or anatomy of the human eye, you should be able to draw this image and label them properly. So when we consider of the different parts of the eye, they have different functions. For example, the choroid absorbs extra light in eye, which enters through the sclera. And the ciliary body is important to hold lens and moves them for focusing of light. The iris is important to control the amount of light which enters into the eye. The lenses are important to focus light onto the retina in order to make the sight. The retina contains visual receptors. The rods allows vision in dim light and detect black and white images and detect broad outlines of images. And the cones are important for the vision in bright light, detect colors in details. The optic nerve is the nerve which carries visual information from rods and cones towards the brain in order to recognize the sight. When we are considering about the eye, it is a ball. So, in order to prevent collapse of this ball, or in order to prevent the shrinkage of this ball, there is a liquid which is filled within this ball. There are two compartments in the eye, that is the compartment in front of the lens and the compartment behind the lens. The compartment in front of the lens is filled with aqueous humor. This liquid is important for the nourishment of structures in the anterior eye cavity. And the compartment behind the lens is filled with vitreous humor. It is important to hold the retina in place and to maintain the shape of the eyeball. The muscles of the eye are also important for the function of the eye. Extrinsic eye muscles are skeletal muscles that move the eyeball. Each eyeball has 6 extrinsic eye muscles attached to them that move the eyeball superiorly, inferiorly, laterally, and medially. The eyelid is an appendage which is important for the protection of the eye. It is composed of skin, muscles, and the dense connective tissue. There is a circular muscle around the front surface of the eye cavity. It is called orbicularis oculi. It is the muscle which is responsible for the blinking of the eyelid. The mucous membrane which lies in the surface of the eyeball and also inner surfaces of the eyelids is called conjunctivas. The important appendage related to eye is lacrimal apparatus. It consists of lacrimal glands and nasolacrimal ducts. Lacrimal glands produce tear, which is important for the cleaning of eye. Tear is mostly watery, but it contains enzymes that can destroy bacteria and viruses. These lacrimal glands lie on the lateral edge of each eyeball. Now let's see about the process of seeing or the sight. The eye works like a camera. First, the light passes through the cornea, pupil, lens, and through the fluids of the eye. Finally, light focuses onto the retina. There, on the retina, an image is projected upside down. The retina converts the sensation of light into a nerve impulse. This nerve impulse runs through the optic nerve into the brain. In the brain, this information is interpreted, and this impulse turns the image upside down. Now it is recognized in its correct position, and then it develops a picture of the object. This picture will give you the idea about the visual pathway. It consists first the eyeball, then the retina, then retina leads or starts the optic nerve. At the optic chiasma, some nerve fibers of the optic nerve exchange to the other side or cross the middle line and enter to the other side. Then these optic fibers enter into the optic tract. Finally, they enter lateral geniculated nucleus of the thalamus. From there, they make synapses, and the absence of new neurons make optic radiations. Then the impulses goes through this optic radiation to the visual cortex in order to interpret the information and recognize the image. So this is the summary of the visual pathway. Now we are going to talk about clinical conditions related to eye. The first one is conjunctivitis, that is the condition of inflammation of the conjunctiva of the eye. And the inflammation of the eyelid is called blepharitis. The scratching of the cornea is called corneal abrasions. Astigmatism is the condition in which cornea has an abnormal shape which causes blurred images during distance or near vision. Cataracts are the structures in the lens which prevent light from going through the lens. And another condition called dry eye syndrome is one of the most common eye problems treated by the physician. Glaucoma is a condition in which too much pressure is created in the eye by excessive aqueous humor. The retinal detachment occurs when the layers of retina separates, considered a medical emergency, and if not treated right away leads to permanent vision loss. Another condition is called macular degeneration. It is a progressive disease that usually affects people over 50. It occurs when the retina no longer receives an adequate blood supply. We are going to learn about the ear. The ear can be divided into three main parts: the external ear, middle ear, and the inner ear. The external ear is composed of the external auditory tube and the tympanic membrane. The middle ear contains three bones called malleus, stapes, and incus. The inner ear, which is also called labyrinth, contains the cochlea and the semicircular canals. So in this picture you can see the parts of the external ear, internal ear, and the middle ear. So this picture gives you the idea about the different components of the ear. So the pinna or the external lobe is the external part of the ear. Then it opens up into the auditory canal or external auditory tube. At the end of the canal you can see the tympanic membrane or the eardrum. And the middle ear, it connects with the nasal cavity through the eustachian tube, and also there are three bones which are interconnected with each other. Those are called malleus, incus, and stapes. And then in the inner ear there is the semicircular canals and the cochlea, which are important to the production of the sound and for the maintenance of the equilibrium of the body. Now let's see about the process of hearing. First, the sound enters the external ear. Then the sound goes through the external auditory canal and finally it hits the eardrum. When the eardrum hits, it starts to vibrate. This vibration is amplified by the bones exist in middle ear. The amplified vibrations are then transmitted to the cochlea, which lies in the inner ear. In the cochlea, there are some tiny hairs. Due to these vibrations, these tiny hairs start to move. These movements triggers nerve impulses. These nerve impulses are then transmitted through auditory nerve to the brain. The brain identifies these sounds and recognizes the sounds. So this picture gives you the idea how the sound produced. So you can see the sound waves comes from the outside. They are collected by the auricle or the external earlobe. Then they go through the external auditory canal and finally they hit on the tympanic membrane or the eardrum. This vibration is amplified by the malleus, incus, and stapes. Then these amplified vibrations are transmitted to the cochlea. In the cochlea there is a structure called organ of Corti. Organ of Corti is composed of those tiny hairs. So in this picture, cochlea is stretched. So you can see its inner structure very well. So when the sounds or vibrations going through the liquid in the cochlea, these hairs in the organ of corti starts to move. Then nerve impulses are started at organ of corti. So then they are transmitted through the auditory nerve. So this is a cross section of the cochlea. So you can see the organ of corti there, where the tiny hairs exist. Ear is the organ which is also important for the maintenance of the balance of our body. The brain constantly monitors the position of our body by the information which received from the semicircular canals of the ear, eyes, and the muscles of the body. The change in the body position is detected by the semicircular canals, and the impulses are passed to the brain. Then brain integrates or interprets this information, and then it maintains the balance of the body. There in the semicircular canals, you can see there is a space called ampulla. In the ampulla, there is a special organ called cupula. Cupula is the organ which is important for the detection of the changes in the position of head. It is composed of tiny hairs. When the head is in still position, these tiny hairs also in the still position, or they are in straight position. But when the head is rotating, these tiny hairs of cupula is also rotates. This rotation stimulate impulses. So these impulses goes through ampullary nerve to the brain, and then brain detects there is a change in the position of the head. So this is the end of this lecture on sensory organs.